In this video, we're going to talk about the segment addition and subtraction postulate. So if you recall, the segment addition postulate is whenever you take the two parts of a segment and you add them together, you're going to get the whole segment. So if this is one part here, and this length right here is another part, if we add those together, we'll get the entire segment. So that's what it's saying. So you take the part plus this part, add it together, you get the whole thing. So the segment addition postulate says part plus part equals a whole thing. Very similar to angle addition, it's just with segments. So if I use the letters to name this, it would be AB is one part plus part BC equals the whole thing AC. So just so you know too, when I have a picture like this, the way to describe this would be to say point B is between A and C. So that's another thing. When you guys get to practice problems, you might see a description that says point B is between points A and C. And what you would do is you would draw a picture that looks similar to this. You basically start with your two endpoints A and C, and then you place a point B somewhere between there. And that's what your scenario is going to look like. So you guys are going to see problems like that where you're going to have to set up. So that's part of this whole addition postulate. So then that would mean part plus part equals the whole thing. So if we look at these examples, this is just kind of filling in the blank. There's a couple corrections here that I made, so just go ahead and make those corrections as well with the letters that were messed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to fill in the blanks. So for example, if I have this first segment, AG, so that's this, AG plus GD, what does that equal? So that part plus that part equals the whole thing, AD. So the whole segment. Now, notice that there's no bars above these because we're using equals, so we're really talking about the distance between points A and G plus the distance between points G and D equals the distance between A and D. If you wanted to use congruent, then you would put the bars above it. So if I put the bars, then I'm using the congruent symbol, but they mean the same thing. So these two things here mean exactly the same thing. So either way you want to write it is fine. So since none of these have the bars and they're using equals, I'm going to stick without putting the segment bars. So if I go to the next one here, CD, so it's saying segment CD plus DE, well, together those two parts would equal CE. Then I move to this one, so BD. So BD is this entire piece here, plus DE would be the entire segment BE. So that's segment addition postulate. So CG plus GF is going to be this entire thing, CF. So you're seeing that letter that's in between the 2 points is just kind of disappearing. So see how point G disappears and becomes AD, point D disappears, because that's the point that's in between the 2 endpoints, the 2 outside pieces. So for this one, you have a double letter G. Well, what's going to happen is if we look at the diagram, we're going to assume that that G is going to disappear and it'll be AD. So if we just confirm that, we have AG plus GD equals that entire thing, AD. Then we look at this one, we have CD plus DE. So again, we get CE. So if we look at the next one, this is the segment subtraction postulate. So this ends up being the exact same process, except for you're going to start with the whole segment. So you're going to start with the whole thing. And if I subtract off this part right here, I'll be left with this other part. So that's what the segment subtraction postulate means. start with the whole, subtract off a part, and you'll be left with the other part. So if we use letters to explain that, the whole thing is AC. If I subtract off this purple piece here, AB, I'm left with BC. Same thing goes with if I start with AC and let's say I subtract off the other part. So I subtract off BC, well, then I'm left with AB. So I take away this section here, I'm left with AB. Same way to describe this, B is between points A and C. So if you see something where it says B is between points A and C, you would draw out a segment like this. You would start with your points A and C and then place point B anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the middle, it just has to be between them. So somewhere between them on the same line, or on the same segment. So if we look at these examples, it'll be very similar, where if you look up top here, you see that common letter is the letter that's disappearing this time. So we have AC, AB. The letter that's disappearing is A. It's listed twice. Same thing with this one. The letter that's disappearing is the repeated letter, C. So if we look down here, the repeated letter is what's going to disappear. So A would disappear. But let's just look at the diagram to verify that. So if I have this whole segment, AB, and I subtract off this part, I'm going to be left with this piece right here. So BD, or you can even write DB. Doesn't matter. Same thing goes for those addition postulate ones. If you switch the order of the letters, that's completely fine. It doesn't have to stay in the same order. Remember, segments, you can name them two ways. So when you're doing these, you can name it two ways. Next one here, if we look at BE, so BE is this whole segment. Take away FE, we're left with BF. Same thing is going to go for the congruent. So if you switch these to congruent, then you'd put the bars above them. You don't have to. You can if you want. If I look at the next one here, CD, so that's this segment, and I subtract off DF, I'm going to be left with CF. Then I have AC, so AC is this whole thing. Subtract off EC, you're left with AE. Again, you see the pattern here with the numbers, or with the letters disappearing. Next one here we have AC. So again, AC, but we're taking away the blue part. So we're going to be left with EC or CE. And then the last one, BE, take away BF. So take away this. We're left with this portion here, which is going to be EF or FE.